The Lekki Headmaster, Kabir Alabi Garba. Dedication. This book is dedicated to all teachers committed to the cause of sound education. You are truly the real builders of the nation. 1. Dusk. Something seemed unusual in the way the principal walked to the podium from the back of the assembly. He moved his tall frame rather ponderously. He was not as smart as he used to be. The trademark morning smile was not forthcoming. He took the microphone from Angel, the chapel prefect, and held it, saying nothing. This was in spite of the fact that the morning's pep talk was over and everyone was excited. All waited for the principal to speak, but the man looked blankly above the students' heads instead of compellingly into their eyes the way he used to. He made an attempt to talk, yet words did not come out. His head dropped over his broad shoulders as he began to stare at the colorful tiles on the floor. There was a heavy silence. The principal again attempted to speak. Tears. Everyone saw them. Tears trickled out of his eyes. He made yet another attempt to produce words. This time, the microphone dropped on the floor, sending a vexatious clatter out of the twin sound boxes at the assembly. More tears streamed from both eyes, competitively rolling down his sunken cheeks. Dozens of perplexed eyes, students and staffs, fixed on him. There was nowhere to hide from these puzzled looks. Then Mr. Bekbo Adewale hid in the only available space. He brought his palms together like a supplicant and shielded his face. The first person who found a voice was the vice principal, Mrs. Grace Ape. "What is the matter, principal?" she asked, moving to his side. 4 other members of staff joined her. But the principal said nothing. Instead, he sobbed freely. The school nurse, Mrs. Titi, fetched a handkerchief and offered it to the weeper. "Please, conclude the assembly and let the students go into their classes immediately," the VP instructed the chemistry teacher, Mr. Justice Annabel. Mrs. Ape, the nurse, and Mr. Oyelano, the CRK teacher, started walking the principal back to his office, his face still buried in his palms, sobbing even more agitatedly. "Sir, what is the matter?" Mrs. Titi, or Nurse Titi, as she was fondly called, asked, as they helped Beppo to his chair in the office. "Is anything the matter?" she asked again. Beppo did not utter a word. The tears did not stop flowing either. At 8:05 a.m., more teachers arrived to console the sobbing principal or possibly lend a helping hand. The VP advised they go to their classes, exempting the guidance counselor, Mrs. Beke Igme. Installations and questions resumed for over 30 minutes. They petted Beppo, all the while he sobbed. Occasionally, he will shake his head. He will look at the ceiling and at the faces before him, as though he had just returned from a dreamy wonderland. Then he will plunge further in tears. The VP's phone, meanwhile, had been ringing. Information had already reached some parents. They were anxious to know what had happened to the beloved principal. One parent learned he was weeping uncontrollably and rolling on the floor. Another parent heard that he kept muttering, "Oluwagbami o, save me, O God." At this point, Mrs. Ape realized the best she could do was to call the managing director, Mrs. Ibidun Gloss, popularly called MD, who, but for a function she had to attend that morning, ought to have been in school. But the morning assembly had not begun on a cheerful note. Since the management of Stardom Schools came up with a shrewd incentive of lowering its boarding fees, the headache it used to have trying to tame lateness had reduced greatly. From 250,000 naira per session, the fee climbed down to 165,000 naira. The result was instant. More than 80% of the parents moved their children to the boarding house, which was a haven of modest comfort enjoyed by elite students. Almost all the students began to turn up at 7:45 a.m. for the assembly. That was far from the case before the policy change. Many of the learners came from different parts of Lagos, where the fear of heavy traffic was the beginning of wisdom. Interestingly, not many parents complained when the school almost immediately raised the fee for excursion and other items by 93,000 naira. Some staff gossiped about this, especially Mr. Audu, the fine arts teacher, who was a bunch of biting humor. He cleared his throat, pushed a finger into his mouth, drew it out, and pointed skywards. In matters of economics, he quipped, I swear the MD is a witch and wizard rolled into one. Audu and his naughty grammar. The assembly had commenced early. The A-list school, located in the posh heart of Lekki, as usual, began the ritual with a short prayer in the form of a recitation of the second stanza of Nigeria's national anthem. O God of creation, direct our noble cause. Stardom did this on Tuesdays and Thursdays, while normal Christian and Muslim prayers were said on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays alongside the national anthem first stanza. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the assembly adopted the second stanza as prayer. It did not bother to recite the first, but simply went straight to the school's anthem. Angel announced it was time for the pep talk. The principal had introduced this 7 years earlier. It involved the presentation of a speech by a student. It was spontaneous at times. At other times, topics were given ahead. Today's talk was, however, different. The way it sometimes happened. Ikenna Egbu, an SS1 student, mounted the podium to narrate his experience. He was part of a group of Stardom students that had just returned from an excursion to Jos Plateau State. I saw Nigeria in its acrobatic beauty, he began, awakening cheers and applause. My fellow students, if you have not been to Jos, Ikenna paused and browsed their excited faces as though he wanted to be sure they were really ready for the discoveries he was about to log into. He continued, you might have been to London. You might have been to New York. But if you have not been to Jos, you must be in that brilliantly beautiful city in your lifetime. Yells and an applause greeted the narrative. One of the most memorable attributes of Jos is its very lovely weather, Ikenna said. Although we are in the dry season, Jos welcomed us with very cool arms. So chilly is Jos that I felt like sleeping every second of the 2 days we spent there. I can also not forget its acrobatic landscape, not in any negative sense, but with rocks that sit in artistic layers and at times in dramatic postures. You could see a rock carrying 3 other rocks on its head. You could find a small rock confidently backing another big enough to give birth to it. Another round of ovation. The narrator paused. He continued, Dearest stars of stardom, some of our hosts said Jos used to be more beautiful than what we saw, and that some violent crisis had affected it. Notwithstanding, I can still confidently say it remains the leading tourism city in this country. No wonder many important white men were said to have lived there during the colonial period. Ikenna named some of the places the group visited, such as the Lamingo Dam, the University of Jos, the Shere Hills, Wasi Rocks, and Solomon La Amusement Park. If I have the opportunity in the future, I would like to settle down in Jos instead of jackpying to Canada or London. A mixed yet fun-filled round of clapping and hollering filled everywhere as Ikenna returned and joined his classmates on the line. The chapel prefect then called for decorum and orderliness, inviting the principal for his address and announcement. Although Ikenna was a science student, he was equally a respected poet. His mom, a broadcaster, was an award-winning poet too. Following the young boy's captivating account, many students and staff expected a great comment from the principal, who had been an inspiring pillar at Stardom for 24 years. His impact had been so remarkable that his employers, parents, and other stakeholders regarded him as a school builder. He gave the students his all with an ever-burning passion to see them grow in all ramifications. On a day like this, he will be on top of the world. He would regard Ikena's outing as evidence of the good education Stardom offered, and which he believed every Nigerian child deserved. The students also expected him to highlight some terms Ikenna might not have articulated so well. They were eager to hear something special from the tall, light-skinned principal, nicknamed the Lekki Headmaster, because of the way he used to imitate characters in the old TV drama Village Headmaster when he was headmaster at Stardom Kiddies. It was his funny way of amusing the pupils. Sometimes Stardom students called him Principal, because he never got tired of saying the pronunciation of principal should not end with pa. It is principal. Beppo would emphasize. But of course, Mr. Beppo this morning was not on top of the world. He was under the world of tears. At her office on the second floor of the admin building, the MD aimlessly removed her glasses and aimlessly dropped them on a tea stool by her right. She never envisaged the frustration fast beclouding what ordinarily should have been a pleasant morning. She had driven down to school hurriedly after the VP raised the alarm about the principal's strange behavior. Only the previous day, the school had celebrated its over 90